Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call the work session for Hudsonville Public Schools on November 28th to order. Thanks everyone for being here this evening. We have one absence, which is Larry Cappinga. He may show up a little later. Sometimes he comes in a few minutes after we start. So as of right now, he's absent. Before we go forward with approval of the agenda, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Vanderjack for a few comments.
Yeah, so as the board recognizes, we lost a student, former student, just over a week ago. Luke Balstad was the student rep to the Board of Education, an amazing young man, amazing character from just everything. You would not ever see that young man without a smile on his face. And lost him too soon. The family, his stepdad is a teacher in this building. His mom started her educational career in the district. In fact, my wife hired her. So there's a very close contact, and it was. It's hard for our kids for that grade, for those that travel on summer science, for those that were in leadership roles in the district, and for those that just knew him as an amazing young man, as a drum major. It's the second drum major we've lost in a matter of months. So you can imagine our fine arts program and our band kids are struggling too. So if we could just take a moment to think about the family, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vanderjack. Okay, before we move to approval of the agenda, I know we sent out a kind of a streamlined agenda this afternoon to make sure we had enough time to get our closed session in. And there was some discussion around contents of the agenda, and so I wanted to open it up for discussion before we approve, and I'll need a motion if there's any change in a second, well, for amendments, but then also on the agenda. So, was there a change to the agenda? Mr. Davis, I know you had sent out.
No, you are clairvoyant. You addressed my concerns without me mentioning them.
Okay, all right, good.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Were there other questions or comments? Okay, can I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as written now?
So moved.
Motion by Chad Tuttle, support?
Support.
Support by Don Sneeden. Any other further questions or comments on the agenda? All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Next, we move on to recognition of visitors and hearing of people present. Robin is here. She will announce those who are speaking to the board this evening. We have our timer up for 3 minutes. Again, please address comments to the board. And with that, we will turn it over to Robin.
Dana Odell is our first.
Standing anywhere, right?
That's fine. Yeah, right there.
Okay.
That's fine.
I just wrote this down, so I'm going to read it right off here. See on the agenda, the board is planning to start the evaluation process of Dr. Vanderjack. I know the past evaluations have been held in closed session. While that is allowed and completely legal, I also know going into closed session is definitely optional. After going over the HPS board policies and published guidelines from the MASB, I've learned that a person being evaluated must request a closed session. The board cannot vote to go into closed session if that person being evaluated does not prefer that option. Alternatively, the request to go into closed session by an individual only happens if the board passes a majority vote on the motion. In recent years, the HPS district has struggled with trust and transparency issues with parents and community members. I happen to think the results of the last millage election indicated that, and I know that the most recent board member election shows it. The 3 elected candidates ran on trust, transparency, and collaboration, and won decisively. And while all 7 board members will have to work towards restoring trust and transparency in the coming years, I'm addressing you tonight about the here and now. I'm requesting that the board publicly ask Dr. Vanderjack if he chooses to go into closed session for his evaluation. If so, I would ask that the board consider voting to remain in open session. A no vote to go into closed session is not a lack of respect for the superintendent. It's a desire to show that you want to restore trust and transparency with parents and the community. While I am making this request here, I'm representing many others. In the last 72 hours, I have gathered a list of 335 names that I can share that are all asking the same thing. If given more time, I'm confident this list would be even longer. These names are from people within the HPS district. They are parents and community members that care deeply about the success of the school district, including the board and superintendent. Thank you for listening and would respectfully ask that you consider this request towards restoring trust and transparency. And I'll just hand these to pass out. There's only 7 copies of the board policy and the MASB guidelines that refer to what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next one.
Jessica Noble.
Members of the board and Dr. Vanderjack, thank you for your presence this evening and taking the time to hear public comment. This fall has been challenging as I learned more about the current curriculum and the approach of how HPS is addressing its mission to educate, challenge, and inspire all learners to become contributing, responsible members of a global society. One of the belief statements on the HPS website is that HPS is committed to providing a challenging and engaging curriculum, effective instruction, and a positive supportive environment. As gifted learners, 2 of my children are now in math classes 1 grade above their current grade level. This was due to our family's continued pursuit of this, as we know that intelligent students who are bored perform poorly in class and have lower self-efficacy. When speaking with administrators regarding why there are not more students doing this or making this process easier, we have been met multiple times with, we have to get everyone caught up on their learning. Or research shows students perform better when those who excel are not separated out. In order to see if this was the case, I did some research on recent MSTEP scores on the Detroit News web app. For 3rd grade in 2021 and 22, HPS math scores from all buildings were 71.8% proficiency, 71.3% proficiency respectively. 4th grade from those years, 66.4% and 68.6%. By 5th grade, those years were 51.6% and 57.8% respectively. This is about a 14 to 20% drop over 2 years. Since this is a large drop, I would think there would be a larger investment in helping students go deeper with this content or have more practice time. However, this is not what I've seen. Instead, HPS students who are excelling and those who are struggling are pushed to the wayside in order to integrate things like ruler. Content in this pilot curriculum is not a teachable major or minor for elementary education majors at the university, nor are teachers trained for the emotionally triggering responses that students may have in regards to this content. How could this possibly be effective, referencing the belief statement, instruction as stated in my review of the curriculum? I additionally found that while the ruler curriculum is supposed to be focused on social emotional learning, they are throwing in concepts to desensitize our children to terms utilized by the LGBT community like ally and advocate. The last time I checked, those are not emotions. Let's let our teachers stick to content they are certified to teach. Let's truly challenge our students who excel and support the students who are struggling, as the HPS mission states, and let parents do their job with the emotional learning.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Brian.
Keith Lyon-Decker.
I'm glad to see that Dr. Vanderjack's performance review is back on the agenda for this board to address. Like many of the folks you have been hearing from at these meetings, I used to be pretty content to not being involved in the goings-on at the school board. But I have dedicated a small bit of time and effort over the last couple of years to be involved and hopefully affect some change. And I know there are many, many other people like me so moved to be involved. I attribute my involvement directly to the personal performance of Dr. Vanderjack. If community involvement and engagement is a metric that you'll be looking at to evaluate on him, I would provide some input on some of the things that profoundly influenced me and many others to get involved at a level we never envisioned. In 2021, he clandestinely ran a DEIB committee that brainstormed ways to make this community less religious, less conservative, and more aligned with leftist ideology. He actively denied the committee's existence to parents who heard about it through the grapevine. He then hired a self-proclaimed critical race theorist and had the gall to stand in front of this community and say the DEIB program wasn't about CRT. In the lead up to teacher training planned for the summer of 21, he told this board that there was no training material to review, when clearly there was material. which we uncovered through FOI requests. And in a play borrowed from a 1990s politician, he claimed that the SOAR documents stating that they were embedding DEIB into curriculum was somehow just a misunderstanding about the word curriculum means. It was an eventful 2021. When his evaluation dragged on the agenda over several meetings last winter, I was hopeful that his behavior was being addressed in a serious manner. I was astounded when this board somehow found a way to not give him a proper performance review. Maybe now it will be dealt with in a serious manner. At the very least, Dr. Vanderdyk has been incredibly effective at getting this entire community involved in what is going on at HBS.
Thank you for your comments. Next one.
Aaron Dewey.
Greetings, Board. Right now, community members and students are gathering across the street for a vigil honoring the lives of the victims of the Club Q shooting. It's the latest in a long line of violence against the LGBTQ+ community that explicitly took place on a holy day set aside to remember the lives of those taken by that violence. You could think of it as someone shooting up the VFW hall on Memorial Day. But violence doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's birthed from hate, and we have seen a lot of hate here these past few years. From trying to deny and erase children's existence to adults threatening violence against students and everything in between. And the silence from this board has acted as tacit approval and support, and given that hate room to grow. Even worse, there have been members and times where that support is explicit, with some members elevating those voices and espousing those views themselves. I thank God for the administrators and the teachers that have been brave enough to push back. But why haven't the rest of you? You can't be for all children while allowing bigotry and hate to target a group of them at your meetings. You can't be for all children while labeling their existence political and then using that as justification for erasure. You can't be for all children while you lift up the mantle of hate, but with prettier words and nicer sounding justification, just like a repeat of the Black Codes after emancipation. You can't be for all children while staying silent in the face of those that would do them harm. You've heard me tell you many times about the sky-high suicide rates amongst LGBTQ+ youth. You've also heard me talk about how interactions and statements play into that, with negative reinforcement increasing that likelihood, while supportive actions decrease it. But yet the denigration goes unchecked. It's time to stop saying we're for all children, and it's time to start acting like it. Our children need you to push back against bigotry and hatred that has been allowed to fester and grow because they face it daily. And while we're busy trying to ignore the numerous children brave enough to speak out and tell us that over the past couple of years, it just gets worse. So I'm begging you, Board, it's time to speak up and put the safety, health, and well-being of our children above the bigotry of a few adults. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else, Robin? Okay. Thank you all for your comments. We move on to discussion items. First up, we have a ruler update. Ms. David,
I'll kick it off.
you'll kick it off.
So about a year ago, we had conversations with the board about the ruler curriculum that we had implemented as a pilot in year one. And we got to the point, the board wanted some more data from our teachers, wanted more research, the work that was being done with our PBIS specialists, the work that Mrs. Thomas has done with them, to really shape the curriculum in a way that really met the needs of what the teachers were asking for. And not to change the curriculum, but to make sure that they're getting supported the way they wanted to. So we're going to show you some data of what we've collected. But keep in mind, we had data from last December. The board asked for some follow-up data this year. So it's our second year of a pilot. We have data from August through that we did initially when school started, and then data tonight. So tonight was just a discussion item, see what other information you might want to hear, and kind of see where we are. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Thomas, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. I have both a handout and a video. I'm going to ask if I could actually share what's like the airplays currently in use. I don't know if there's a, sorry.
Could you share it with
That would be great. Thanks.
You can show me how to unshare it, and we'll do that. Thanks. That blue one right there, the big one? Yeah. Thanks.
So, our PBIS specialists have spent a good deal of time preparing a video, and due to its length, I'm just going to show a portion of this. but it's really excellent, so we'd love for people to see it, so we'll share it with you following the meeting. See it. And then additionally, I think the purpose too of crafting a video was also just to give kind of a visual to what it looked like on a day-to-day basis, and just to have a picture to go along with the data portrait that you'll see in just a little bit. So this is, again, just a slice of the video, but I think it gives a good picture of kids and the teachers interacting. I think it's a volume issue, actually. So maybe I will transition to the handout. Well, maybe Keith can help us out. So I'm going to actually post the handout that you have in front of you to share on the screen so others can view it as well. And I am just going to come to zoom in here. So what you'll see at the top is just a comparison of the teacher perception data from a couple different data points. So, could you zoom in here? Here we go. On the top, you'll see that there's two pie graphs. One is from last February, and in a teacher survey, we asked teachers what their preference would be at that point, either to continue using the ruler curriculum, to see a new selection committee begin to identify a new curriculum, or to refrain from adopting a social emotional curriculum. And at that point, and I know we had some discussion around that data point as well, there were 56.5% of teachers that supported the continuation of ruler. In our most recent survey that was done in November, 93.8% of the teachers supported the continuation of the ruler curriculum. You will notice from the pie graph that the third option of refraining from an SEL curriculum was omitted, and this was from our discussions around seeing this as a SOAR 4 goal of looking at and reviewing to find a district-wide SEL curriculum. We felt it important to present the two options that would align with that SOAR 4 goal. So looking at, would the teachers prefer to see the district come back to the selection review process to identify other curriculums out there that would support social and emotional competencies, or to continue with ruler? And so that's the graph on the right. As I scroll down the page here, I also have some other survey questions that were asked, and this is comparing data from December 2021, August 2022, and November 2022. And what you'll see on the bottom of the graph are different questions that were asked. These were worded the same in both the August and November surveys. In December 2021, while the description of the question may have shifted, I guess, in order of words, they were asking about the same components of implementation. And so they are comparable in terms of asking teachers' perceptions on the various aspects of implementation. So if you look to the left, it looks at ruler lessons are developmentally appropriate for the grade level I teach. In December 2021, looking at developmental appropriateness, we were started at 45. In August, we asked teachers to complete this survey prior to reviewing the changes and the edits that were done this summer. In June, I know we discussed in a work session about the work that teacher leaders were planning to do around preparing a pacing guide, being able to pull together lesson materials and slide decks for ease of implementation, as well as identifying maybe updated videos and handouts for teachers to use alongside of the lesson objectives. And so prior to seeing those changes, they took the survey again as sort of a recap to identify how are they feeling after that 6-month window of implementation. And then most recently in November, we asked again, and that increased to 86.2% of teachers completing their survey as identifying either a 4 or a 5 on a 5-point Likert scale. So the percentages are lined the same across questions, in that if the percentage equals the number of teachers who endorsed 4 or 5 on a 5-point Likert scale. So we're really happy with these results. We think it really shows that teachers felt that the work that has gone into both piloting a new curriculum, which we believe is a challenge no matter what the curriculum is. It's new material to engage with, and that takes time to build comfort and confidence in. But additionally, we know that we have a really strong group of teacher leaders and PBIS specialists that really took the time to take the feedback that we received in narrative form back last spring, and they really took the time to make sure that those needs were addressed over the summer to be able to present and provide coaching around this fall. So we feel that this data just indicates really positive gains in both teacher perception and teacher use of the curriculum. Okay. While I'm on this document, I think I'll just keep rolling here with the student growth measure. This is on the back side of that first page. This graph shows student growth. Last spring, we also looked at a student growth measure. And in a very similar way, we selected 2 grade levels just to show sort of a sampling of students. And the growth measure was centered around 1 unit of study from the ruler curriculum. So in this example, both 4th and 1st grade students were, they looked at the lesson objectives both before the unit was taught and then after the unit was taught to identify if they showed gains in the different skills that were identified as lesson targets. And you'll see those bulleted just below. So that's really identifying how can they engage with this feeling word with the mood leader, which is a tool that the curriculum provides in terms of understanding where emotions might lie and how they impact our thinking and our feeling and our behavior. It also helps, we also look to say, does the student understand the cause and effect between maybe how a character or a person might feel this emotion in the context of a scenario or a story or a situation. And then also, most importantly, is what regulation strategies would they see this being used if this emotion was felt? And then most specifically, strategies that they've learned through the ruler curriculum. So this is just a pre and a post assessment from 1 unit, and you'll see for both the 1st and 4th grade students, we saw a really nice increase in their scores from this. So this is our data portion, and I'd love to show you a short visual with the video. Okay.
Another important feature of the program is the meta moment or best self. The best self provides a process for students to respond to emotional situations with strategies that align with one's best self and that support healthy relationships and personal well-being. The meta moment is a visualization tool for students to use to respond to emotional situations and handle their emotions appropriately in the best possible way.
Draw a picture of what you look like being your best self.
I think just going forward into this big world, it's important to learn from a young age how they can take an active part in making the best decisions they can make at an early age, noticing what that looks like, what it sounds like. In the classroom, I like to focus on what they look like. What does their face look like? What does their voice sound like? Are they showing their friends the grace that they want to be shown as well? Are you using a tone of voice that maybe might be scary for your friend? Are you trying to boss a friend or correct a friend in a positive way? We talk about mistakes are good because that's how we learn. Practice using a better voice and some better words to encourage our friends.
So that was just a really short clip. Again, the video is 12 minutes long, and I know that there's other pressing items, and so we were planning to send this to you just so you can see the full visual. They really did a fantastic job on this. I think that I want to thank the PBS specialists that put this together, but also the teachers that volunteered to be a part of it. So moving back to the data handout.
Maybe just a quick
Yes.
question. The video is meant for like what audience, or is it posted on the webs? What happens
Yes.
with the video?
So we'd love to share this with you, and then also I know that we have talked about making it just available on the website, just to share and pair along with some of the other resources that we've posted for Ruler. So parents, which they can still access, is just an overview of the units that covered by each grade level.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any questions you want to ask related to the data?
No, I think this is great. I mean, great graphics, great information, really appreciate that. Was there anything in the various other comments or surveys of the teacher that didn't seem to change much? In other words, was there anything that you say, well, in this one area, this is where it looks like we can either improve or we need to make some tweaks based on November's data as well?
Yeah, I think that we continue to just talk about, time, but that's not unique to Ruler. That's all subjects, all content, and making sure that we do a good job of meeting all kids' needs throughout the day. But specific to Ruler, I guess I would say that in our team's discussion of what feedback has looked like is just to continue to unpack that strategy section. We know that there's no one strategy that works for all people related to helping you get to the emotional state that you'd like to be in. And so also being able to depict that in a way that just is something that can be used as a tool throughout the day, not just when we're talking about the rural curriculum. So that's something that we hope to dive into in the future too.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So I have a few questions.
Of course, yes.
So the first one is, when we were originally presented the data, the board received the raw data that we could look through. So I would request that we receive the raw data again.
Okay.
And the reason why I state that was in the last presentation, prior to it being shown here, there were some misleading slides that I had brought up to Ken and Dr. Vanderjack that were subsequently changed.
Can you elaborate on that? Sorry.
Yep, I would have to pull up my notes. But there was a slide that was misleading with the data, and it was changed prior to, and I don't know if you remember the slide, Ken, but you remember I had, the data was misleading.
Yeah, we changed one of the questions.
Yeah, it wasn't what the data was showing.
Yeah.
So,
I guess I'm trying to figure out the question.
So and I spent a lot of time looking at the data, and if I hadn't looked at the data, I would never have known. Which is why I'm bringing it up, because on paper, yes, this looks wonderful. But that's why I want to see the data.
Is the data is in your other copy? I don't know if you did you get one of these?
Yeah, no, I want to see the actual data. Before we had like all the comments.
Oh, you want to see the comment section?
Yeah.
I thought you
maybe
meant,
there
the data
wasn't-
is all here. This is all the data.
Did you ask open-ended
We
questions?
do have an open-ended question that
Okay.
we can share the comments with the board. The data is all in front of you.
The second thing is when you do a pilot, if you want to look at true results, you have to compare apples to apples. In the survey, you have removed, do teachers want to refrain from adopting? So in essence, they only had 2 to pick from. So if you're going to look at true data, you can't change your questions. That's why when you do a pilot, you think very carefully about what you want to ask, because you can't change anything moving forward. And I know the questions on the bottom, you've mentioned, you've adapted them. You've got to ask the same questions.
So Barb, just so you know, we specifically did that because the request was yours that we wanted an SEL curriculum. So the question wasn't whether we kept it or not, was do we want Ruler or not? So that's why we did it that way. It was under.
I don't know if I said I wanted an SEL
Well,
curriculum, because
I know that you
what
had mentioned that
is.
we wanted an SEL curriculum, so that was
Yes.
not a question we should be asking anymore. So that's why we specifically asked the question that way.
If there's a board vote, I'd like to see it.
No, it wasn't a board vote.
I'm
It was a comment that was made.
not opposed
That's
to
fine.
SEL. I'm not opposed.
That was, I think,
I
that
guess
was
my
why we didn't ask the
concern,
question.
my current concern is, I don't know if all students need SEL. I think there are some students that would very much benefit from SEL. Do all students need it? I'm not so sure. Not when we've had learning loss from COVID. That's my concern. I don't know about ruler. I do have some concerns with ruler. That's why you look at the data, you look at everything. And I would just like to see the comments.
Sure. Speaking to the survey questions and how they were worded in December, we can also share the blank form with you so you can see how closely aligned those questions were. I just wanted to give that caveat because it may have presented slightly different, but I'd be happy to share both the survey questions so you can see how they were the same.
School has not been in session very long. I calculate, what, about 56 days? Does anyone know? About 56? Some of those were early release. I know, when I continue a pilot, I want to look at the same time frame, because how far are we into ruler? Like, how many units have we covered? How many are we planning to cover? It's hard because you've looked at it so early. And I know, Dr. Vanderjack, you want this approved. I know that.
I don't want it approved. I want to answer your questions regarding this. I think the questions.
No, I know you want it approved. At the breakfast meeting, you said you want to bring this to the board meeting in
No,
December for approval.
I want to bring it to the board because that was the request of the board.
Yeah.
This isn't about me. This is the board's request.
Yeah. And
Following the
again,
board's
we're reviewing it now for a vote in December. So it's an action, we're reviewing it now to take action on it in December.
Right.
Per the
Which
request.
is what the, my recollection, Barb, which is what the consensus of the board was back in, I have to find the exact
March.
meeting. But we said, okay, let's let this run through December, in order to, get through a
March
trimester, in
28th,
order
then
to
you vote.
evaluate, collect more data, evaluate the program, and then bring it to a vote in December. But I hear your point about maybe I want more data. I understand what you're saying, but that was
I mean, this is a
my
big
recollection of what
decision.
they were. Yes, yep. So, comments, I think that's a fair request of sending the comments out with the rest of the data.
I mean, we haven't had time to even look at this. It would have been helpful if this had been sent in board briefs as well.
I have trouble
And how can I
digesting.
prepare questions without just looking at it now?
I think sometimes we expect that there's 2 board meetings where we're voting every time. And this work session is intended to give us additional information, not to come to a vote. I appreciate the fact that you need it soon enough to ask questions. But when we are requesting updates and data information, and that's what they're giving us at a work session, I'm not sure what else you can do in preparation for the next month's voting. And to me, this is data then that I need to take and prepare for my vote, whether it's December or January. It's always a catch-22 when something's presented as a draft and that has to be changed, and then there's always issues about, well, it was a draft, whereas to me, if we get this at a work session, we know that this is the full picture for us to look at and talk about and discuss without creating even more work around that particular subject. And maybe because I've been doing this for however many years, and so have you, Mark, I think they've gone above and beyond in the amount of information given to us compared to even 5 years ago, what we would receive as part of our work session. And if as a board we're saying we need to change that method, I guess we can have that conversation.
The method, as I would understand it, would be that we receive information, and again, I have trouble digesting at a meeting, regardless of what is the financial report or anything else, I have trouble digesting at a meeting. I need time to look at it. But the pattern would normally be, from my understanding, that at the work session, we would have all the data ahead of time to digest it, so that we could reach a consensus at this meeting and then have the vote at the regular meeting. Otherwise, we're going to come to the next meeting in December with a lot of questions, which we won't be able to answer at this meeting here. The other concern that I have was the parents' involvement in this. Do we have any consensus of the parents. Now, we had one person speak to the issue tonight. I've got a number of phone calls from parents who are concerned. One parent who tried to see the buildings, I understand that this has been removed from the buildings now.
We have one collection or one binder for each grade level at the central office for parents
But
to view.
not in the buildings anymore.
And that was just based on printing costs, but wherever we have a parent that's interested in viewing, we're happy to set up a time for them to come and see it.
Yeah, but the parent that talked to me wasn't able to see it before this meeting tonight. They wanted to see it before this meeting tonight, and there were multiple reasons why they couldn't see it before the meeting tonight. And I'm interested in the teachers input. Have all the buildings been surveyed on this? Because I know one building I thought had not been surveyed as recently as the 10th of November. I could be wrong about that.
All of our K-5 teachers took the survey on the same day.
Okay, all the buildings.
Yes.
Okay. The parents' input is very important to me on this, and I'd like to have them have opportunity as they need to review it. It's a pretty serious program. I share Bob's concerns that I support social emotional learning, but I don't know that every student needs it at the same level. It seems pretty boilerplate to me, just in my cursory review of it. Very boilerplate, and I'm not sure that it reaches the depths that some students will need to reach. I know we have other specialists that can help with that as well. A couple of the parents did email me about this, about a couple pieces that are in the program, and I don't know at what point they'll be seen, but one was a fifth grade piece, grade 5, unit 18. The word was understood, and the material for that was this book called The Other Boy. I don't really want to discuss the book, except to say that I don't know that I want my children having to address the issues in this book with a teacher. I'd like to have them addressed at home, or with a pastor, or with a psychologist. There are complex issues in that book, if that's a part of the curriculum. Well, it is a part of the curriculum. And it disturbs me that that would be given to children when it should be dealt with by parents, by pastors, by psychologists. And I'm not denigrating teachers. I just think that they have a lot on their plate, and they're not really the ones to be dealing with this issue that's going on in this book. The other was, and one that concerned me as much as that, it was the fifth grade, unit 7. The topic was value, and there's a TED video, which I can send to anyone who wants to see it, featuring a 10-year-old boy describing his friendship with a 44-year-old man who was autistic. Lovely video. I enjoyed watching it, but this 10-year-old boy has this very good friend. They call each other on a daily basis. They have play hide and seek together. They have sleepovers. And I had trouble digesting my son as a 10-year-old boy having sleepovers with a 44-year-old man. And having that kind of material in the curriculum disturbs me deeply. So those are my concerns, which I'd like to have us address at some point.
Can I just ask another question? The printing cost. Did we change things significantly that we would have to reprint everything for all the schools? If all the elementary schools had the materials, we changed things that significantly that we couldn't print them again for people to want to see them?
So we can certainly print them. I think there was an issue of just that we had
well, they've already been printed. Have things changed that much that we have to print things new?
Yeah, so the lessons were put into slide decks. So the slide decks would then be printed to the updated binder. And I guess I would just say that based on the number of requests to review, there was few enough to feel that one set of binders could meet the need for requests to review that. And so that was the change and the thinking around behind, should we print 8 copies of this, or could we print 1 copy of it and have one centrally located group of
If we do
binders?
that, why is it so hard for parents to be able to review it now?
I don't believe that it is challenging for parents to review.
A phone call and a visit, to me, isn't that difficult, and the involved parent, as much as these parents are, I would expect that, other than if it was a work schedule conflict, that would be too much to ask if someone's requesting to look at it. I mean, I guess if you lived in Bauer or someplace at the far reaches and you had to drive 10 miles to the central office, some people might consider that a burden.
I just think we want to give the impression we want everybody to see everything they want to know about this. And the parent called me and was concerned that there wasn't that sense that they were welcome to see it, but other they were not welcome to see it. And I don't want that perception to go on. So I'm concerned about the teachers' opinion on this. I'm concerned about student evaluations on this, but I'm more than anything concerned about the parents and this. And I need some way to have some comfort level that parents are comfortable with this universal curriculum being presented to every child regardless of their emotional status.
We can certainly do some thinking around how to do that differently. I know that that would present you with the apples to apples, as we said, but in the past, when we have done a parent survey, we have not found an ideal mode to capture a large number of responses around that, but we can certainly give that some thought about how to push that out.
Was there any thought, we just had parent-teacher conferences, and of course, so many elementary parents go to teacher conferences. Any thought of having this discussed at parent-teacher conferences with parents, like to have a survey form or anything like that? Where we would catch them in the moment?
Yeah, we did not discuss that as an option. I know that that time goes by so fast.
Like even to have a survey when they come in,
Sure.
check in, or
Yes.
not to actually be with the teacher, but I'm just trying to think of ways to get data.
Sure, I appreciate that. Yeah, we can certainly discuss other opportunities. I do think, just to go back to the timing of why November, there was some discussion last year about if at any point the board were to ask us to shift to a different direction, it would just be difficult to do in the spring, to be able to prepare for an option, to be available to do well in the fall. And so the thinking was, if in fact the decision was to go back to the table in the selection process, just to have the time to do that well. And so this isn't a natural time in the year to ask to do, at this point in the year, is this a good time to do program evaluation? But also at this time of the year, a little more than a year into it. So I think that we've experienced all of the units that we intended to pilot, so asking teachers sort of their reflection at this end of what will be almost a full calendar year.
So all the units that you've intended to pilot have already been done this year in the 56 days?
No, I'm sorry. When we last discussed this, we had not yet finished our intended pilot. We were talking about this in February or March, I believe. And so I'm just suggesting that at this point, they had finished that full calendar year one, and now we're a little bit into year two. So it's a different spot than we were last March, I guess is what I was trying to say.
Randy, other than the question at the top that omitted the option to not, the questions at the bottom do appear to be apples to apples comparison, survey to survey.
Yeah,
Except the ones that are missing that don't have a parallel data, you don't see the bar.
Yeah, so the questions that have a blue bar from December, they're question prompts that ask for these same areas of input. And I can certainly share the verbiage of the words. They're very, very similar to what you see presented here on this graph. The items that don't have a blue bar graph were added to both this August and November out of response to the feedback given in last year's narrative feedback about areas that they hope to see improvement. So those were added that we didn't have in December.
I'll just say, in light of the fact that the response rate is highest in the November results most recently, and that those are apples to apples questions, that's pretty remarkable improvement, particularly, I recall in the spring we were talking about concerns around the time it would take to complete, concerns from teachers that would they have adequate time, and that seems to have been significantly resolved. And to Barb's point, just in the 55 or 56 days of this year, to see such improvement across the question in such a short time frame was at least telling on behalf of the teacher feedback. I too would be interested in seeing some of the comments of some of the teachers and just seeing what qualitative comments are there to support the quantitative. evidence, but overall, the results seem to indicate that teachers are more favorable. That doesn't discount, I think Mark's concerned about, is there a way to gather additional parental feedback into the process? I think that would be valuable as well, but at least these represent pretty significant improvement in a pretty short time.
Other questions, comments? Yeah, we tasked the team to go back and look at teacher evaluation. We had concerns back in the spring relative to some schools showing very low interest, in adoption of the program. We had the data. There was a lot of variability in the data. There were a few things that we were concerned about. I think we were in the high 50s in terms of acceptance on some of the questions and so on. So there were a number of things that we were expressing concern about. Looks like the team has done a lot of hard work, to Chad's point, to go out to collect additional data. I think it shows an acceptance by the teachers. And I would argue, even if you had that third question back in there, do you want to get rid of the SCL? I mean, when you're at 94%, you're going to get some percentage, sure, that says, yeah, we don't want to do it right now, but it's not going to drop down to 40% or something like that. Not that we shouldn't consider that, but when you get a percentage that high, that kind of tells you something. So the comments, and so anyway, to finish that thought, the team has done what the board consents on the team doing back in the spring. So thank you for that. We're hearing discussion around wanting to see the comments, so if you can please send that out. Right now, this is slated for a vote in December at the board meeting. I would say that if board members have further information or things that they'd like to understand and see, please set up time with Mandy, with Amy, and the team to go through and get those questions answered, so that we can either take a vote or decide that we want to push it out to January. I mean, again, it's our decision. We're asking the team to do a lot of work to support that, and I would agree that we've never looked at data around the curriculum to this extent in my 18 years on the board. So I think this is nice work, but some more work, some more additional information that potentially we want to see. To the board, please reach out to the team and ask those questions to the team. Think about the parental input aspect of it and how we might collect that. Now, if it's like high school, I don't know, I think a large percentage of kids are virtual. I assume it's the same in elementary, right? For a parent teacher. I mean, I saw
It varies so much.
Huh?
Most are in person.
So anyway, the point, so that may or may not be a good way, because so many of them are virtual now, and they're limited. There's 5 minutes, and you're clicking through kids, but give some thought to parental input and how that might look like, if you would please, and we can come back and take a look at that. And again, it's the team's doing a lot of work. It's our job to say whether we want to go forward with this or not as a board, because it's a curriculum adoption. And I think the team is just trying to get the information that the board wants so we can make that decision. So, okay, any other questions or comments on that? Maybe you can put some thought into that, team, and maybe give us some thoughts on parental input, and maybe Doug, maybe someone in the upcoming board brief, you can share some thoughts with us prior to the December meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I would also, I know board members get contacted by parents and different individuals. I would encourage sharing of information across the board, so we all have a chance to see what concerns are being raised, and we can all have some that can formulate all our thoughts as well. So I would just encourage that. It's up to you as a board member, but I would continue to encourage that communication.
I've shared all my concerns that I heard this evening, but I would like to have, not necessarily a response to my question about grade 5, unit 7, and grade 5, unit 18. Those trouble me deeply.
Okay, you got a note on that, Katie?
Yes, I do.
Amy? Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else on ruler, we move on to district course approvals.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Who's taking this?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So,
Okay.
I'm supposed to say this. Board policy requires that the board adopts all the curriculum that we use in the district. Since we have been here, I'll say several of us, everything that's gone for board approval or for courses has been adopted by the board. Unfortunately, we have several courses that have never been adopted by the board since 1972. Thanks to Jan in Amy's office, she went back to board, and it's a very historical, it's very informative to look at the board minutes from 1972. But there were several courses that there is no board approval that they have gone through and are in the district. Since we've been here, I can't say that's the case, however, we were not here in 1972 and passed. So we are looking for the board to take action on all the courses that we offer in Hudsonville that do not have a date assigned to them. And a lot of this stems from many courses that are moving to virtual. We cannot add a virtual course to the district unless it is already board approved. So for example, if geometry was not offered in Hudsonville, but there's a virtual course for geometry, we could not offer that virtually unless it had already been board approved. So thanks to Craig's work, finding out that, you know, even as some of the courses, as you look at, I don't know, graphic design as an example. If you want to do that online, we couldn't offer it because we don't have a board approved date on there. So at some point, we would like the board to take action on all of the ones that don't have a date, so we can have a date, so moving forward, we will know that any course that is new will individually go to the board as they have in the last 5 years. Did I describe that?
Yes.
We were shocked that there were this many courses that were not board approved.
Okay, so we have to take action, not now, not tonight, but in the future, we have to take action on those that were not approved by the board in order to establish that baseline that allows us to offer those classes virtually if so deemed necessary. And then that also establishes the baseline by which all new, as we have been doing, all new courses are approved.
Right. So if something were to come that we were like, hey, can we offer this course, and it is not on this list, then we'd have to take it to the board for approval, like we would any other course.
Right, okay. So the board, we should be reviewing the list, asking questions about, hey, what's this course, what's that course? Can you explain this to me or that
We'll
to
do
me?
the best we can. We're not going to bring the department heads of every.
Sure, right, I
But
understand.
if you have questions like, how did this course, you know, if there's a,
Whatever.
I looked through it, and
Got
there
it.
was nothing that really caught me off guard, but if there
I
is,
did
please
too,
let
and
us know.
nothing really caught me with,
But
so,
it's a weird request, but we have to bring it, we'd like to clean it up.
okay, and you'd like to take action in December 8th board
Yes.
meeting? You could go into January, but we'd like to target December 8th.
And it only because we have online students that we'd like to get courses
That we'd like to get
that
taught.
truly are basic courses that you would think this is a no-brainer. But if we have to do our research and getting through the, whether it be textbooks that already exist, keep in mind, none of this has been in the last 5 years, but it was prior to that.
Okay,
One,
yeah, go ahead, Jim.
one note, I do see ceramics on here, and I swear we approved ceramics in the past 2
Mhm.
years.
We did.
And I don't see a date next to ceramics.
Yeah, and we couldn't find it in our board minutes.
I think we approved, I will check, Chad, but I think we approved the ceramics at the middle school level, because we got a potting, a wheel and everything
recall
from the
that,
high
yeah.
school.
Yeah, I
But
recall
I'll
that,
double check on
yeah.
that, yeah.
I recall that.
I'm almost positive that was a middle school
And
course.
unfortunately, they don't overlap because it could be different.
And then I have a question, and I hate to keep beating this, but under social, emotional, we have ruler curriculum for the elementary. Wouldn't that be added to the list
It would.
after we approve?
That's correct. It would remain blank and something that would be coming to the board,
Yeah.
or if we have a course that's on here that, because we still have a course that we'd like to bring to the board for next school year, that would come on later. So this is not a blanket way to get something else on there that's not.
Okay, so, but if we approve this, how are we gonna approve this? Are we gonna go line item by line item, or are we gonna blanket approve this Excel spreadsheet? Because if we do that, then everything on here has been approved. So the one that you're proposing, ruler, would be approved. It seems like we would only have things that we're currently offering on this sheet right now. I'm just asking.
Yeah, it doesn't matter either way. You can approve
Yeah.
it, except of one, you can go line by line.
Well, can you denote, to Barb's point, can you
We can pull
denote?
it, it doesn't, yeah.
Well,
We can add it
denote,
later if it's
put it- Just put a
approved.
note on there, that not yet approved.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
I don't
just
know if
go
all
along.
these classes are currently offered, I'm assuming they are.
Well, it depends, because right now, some of them are not, but they have been in the past, or they could be next year based on student, their selection.
Is there a course, we used to always get.
Course book.
Course book, is that available online?
It is.
They're
So
all
that's something you
linked.
could look at, Barb.
And they are linked in this document.
Okay, oh, okay, good.
If you click on the link,
I
it links
see.
somewhere.
But for clarity, the ruler would be one. If there's any, just if something is on here and it's not yet approved, just denote it on here,
Yeah.
please, so there's
Sure.
no confusion on it.
Sure.
Other questions or comments on this? Okay, move on to Bauer and Riley roof bids.
Thank you. So tonight, in the packet, we have, want to know, as Ken said, this is a combined bid package. It has both the Bauer edition, which is addition of the gymnasium, 2 classrooms, breakout rooms, and certain playground items update, as well as the complete replacement of the Riley roof. And we're just reviewing the recommendation tonight. We're going to answer any questions that we can come up, and then ask for action on it at the December meeting. If there's anything that I can't handle, Bryce is here. At least he was here. Yeah, he's still here. Bryce is here for OAK. But so just in summary, our total of the bids is $5.4 million, and that's on the first page. And if you turn to the second page, the spreadsheet is really more informational. We've got a summary of the bids, but then down below, this is OAK's normal practice. They put in allowances for certain things that could happen on the project. For instance, we've got a $50,000 allowance for potentially unsuitable soils. And there's an allowance in there to take care of something we might have to do for the lift station. Some projector screens. We've got an allowance in there for moving the portables from Bauer over to Park. So in addition to that, we have a 10% contingency. So we feel that we were we were very conservative on the contingency, but we've also got a lot more built-in contingencies in these allowance lines. So we're really, really happy about this budget. But I would like to call your attention down to the note, depending on how large you zoomed in. Note A is that in August, we discussed the bond budget in some detail, and that's the total of uncommitted funds for Bauer and Riley, $7.3 million. Before this went to bid on bid day, I believe it was November 8th, the cost estimating group led by Chris Ford from OAK had estimated that we were going to be at $7.5 million worth of bids. And I say with our bids, with the project, because many of these lines have been bid. The way Bryce and OAK prepared the documents, they have a unit cost for soil. They have a unit cost for insulation. Those things are already bid. So we were expecting the project to come in at $7.5 million with our cost estimate, and the cost estimate right now with bids and allowances is at $7.1 million. That includes the replacement. The one project we did as an alternate of a boiler, an overhead heating unit above the current cafeteria combo gymnasium at Bauer. So that unit's old. Lee pointed it out early on. It wasn't in the original, like, named bond scope, but the bond language allowed us to do that. And so we've got to touch we've got to touch a line. There's a line that's going to go from the current boiler, which is more in the center of the building, all the way down the hall and all the way to the east to where we're expanding the building. So we're going by there anyways. It just makes sense to do that unit while we're there and tear that up. So we're also happy that we're able to get that alternate taken care of. But just would also like to look at the bidder participation. If you flip through the support pages, most of the big bid categories have 3 or 4 bidders, and some of those that only have a couple, we have very strong bidders. We really, we did extremely well in the early winter of 2020 with the high school freshman campus connection and arena addition and 5-6 building, and we did really well on this. We had a great bid day, and it's, I mean, people like to work at Hudsonville, and also like the OAK is just bringing us a lot of bidders to the table. They're just getting us, we're getting participation that we weren't getting before. And on top of that, they spent a lot of time on this, we're leading up to this day, making phone calls. Phone calls, phone calls, phone calls. So other projects, I've talked to even, I don't want to say other OAK projects, but other OAK projects didn't do this well. We really, really are happy with the results of these bids. And a couple I'd like to just draw your attention to, if I could. If you can flip to the aggregate pier, which is bid category 3. We only had 1 bid on November 8th, so we didn't open that. Bryce and his team called and called and called. Most people who do this work don't reside in Michigan. And we thought we were going to get 2. We only actually got 1 more bidder. But the gentleman who ran this, putting the pier, different kind of pier, but the pier's down on this site, works for this Michaels, however you want to pronounce it, company now from Montgomery, Illinois. So feel good about that bid and that, because we had an allowance in there for $500,000 just for that one project alone. So we feel good about the price. We feel good about their solution, because that is a design build category. They've got our structural report, but it's pretty unique. Another one I'd like to call your attention to is, we continue with the, on bid category 16, you notice we have 1 bidder. We decided early on in this whole bond project to sole source ControlNet for our controls integration. And happy with that. They've got a lot of work to do across the district, but that's why we only have one bidder in that category.
For that category, that's the entire building, right, and not just the addition?
Great point. Yes. Great point.
Can I ask a question of clarification? Sure. And this is probably just because I can't do the math that quick in my head, but talks about the recommended motion being $5.4 million, and when I look at the bid summary sheet, there's obviously the 19 categories and then some of the allowances. Would it be fair to say under 19, the subtotal there would be 5.4, or am I misreading this?
Yeah, yes, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Subtotal is 5.4.
Gotcha.
If you look on the first page, that we have those.
Okay.
We just don't put a subtotal underneath line 19. We could have, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna say, because, and in my mind, I'm looking, okay, why does it say 7 point whatever, and it's 5.4? So when we approve the bid package, we're approving just the 1 through 19 items. The other things are things that we have allowances for in case. And
yes.
through our approval, that would be approved as well?
Well, so that's not the whole story.
Okay.
You got most of it.
Okay.
Another line is, there's OAK's fee, and there's
Yes.
OAK's supervision.
Okay. Yep.
So those lines are in there, and we dealt with that when we hired OAK at the front of the project.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. That makes sense now.
Yeah, great questions.
When are we looking to kick this off, Pat, these roofs?
Well, both. We need to get the roof done this summer. But we're really, as soon as the weather allows us, to start working on this. It's a pretty nice project because it's on the end of the building.
Yeah.
If we can get in there, as soon as weather allows us in the spring.
Okay. Any overlap between these, any overlap between these folks here, any companies here, and our companies that are working on the other? Not that that should
Oh, yeah.
drive it, I'm just curious. Is there any much overlap or not?
We do have some bidders that we did end up accepting that are part of some of the current construction projects. But Joe feels concerned for over manpowering or overstaffing them. To highlight a couple, earthwork subcontractor Al's Excavating is actually doing the excavating out here from Field House. Bulk of their work out here will be wrapped up by then. And this certainly isn't a large project on their scale of things. Choice Concrete Construction is one that's done some of our bond work also. Grade Masonry is doing the 5th, 6th building. Then Dell Steel is also doing the steel for this addition over here. The bulk of that work will be done too. Vander County Construction is working on the 5th, 6th building right now. Boss Glass is doing the glass for the addition here also, but they're pretty spread out with work, so shouldn't be concerned here. DHE Plumbing is also working throughout the district on the majority of projects. They're one of the larger ones in the area, so for a project like this can certainly fit their scale. And that's kind of the highlight of the ones that we're currently working with.
Fair enough. Okay.
I think Pat's critical too. He nailed all the questions I had except for one. So in the bids, we also bid out alternate 2, which was the skylights at Riley, and it looks like we're rejecting that bid alternate. So can you talk about those skylights and what the plan is?
Yeah.
There,
So
why we're rejecting it?
We're looking at it as whole, because we don't know if, because we don't know how we're gonna do on the park project. The park project is huge, it's much more intense, it's student relocation, working around students, and just, we're more nervous about that project.
It's not been bid yet.
Yeah.
So in terms of
we're
the
just waiting on
skylights
that.
though, I'm more, but what I would be curious with the skylights is, can we get away with not replacing the skylights for a while, or is that something we're gonna come back, and if it's a matter of dollars, should we be looking at?
It's not gonna be cheaper if we do it later.
Correct.
Yeah.
And should we look
It's
at
more
using, like,
cosmetic right
sinking
now
fund
than it
dollars
is.
right now versus.
If they were leaking to the point that we had to do something, we have buckets all over, that's not the case. It's more cosmetic.
It might be worth asking though, if you came back to do those as a standalone project,
What would it cost me?
what it would cost, because if it's double, it might be worth
Tie it into something.
roofs or.
They're like those pyramid, and there's some delamination. There's not, it's not anywhere near leaking. We have that at other schools, and there would be other interventions we could put in place long before we need to do the full replacement. But it does give us a point in time. But yeah, it's just we're trying to protect any dollars we might need for the park project, which is just gonna be tougher. This is nice and clean because it's all addition, all on the end, and you always work around kids with your own school site, but it's not right in the middle of the kids like park is, which is gonna be, if they can get this many bidders for park, that'll be a much longer job also. It'll be done phased. Just gotta do one side of the hall, other side of the hall. So that's the reason.
Any other questions or comments on the roof bids? Again, we're looking to take action in December. Get this roll. Anything else?
I talked a lot because it was really the architects, when they're up there doing their preliminary and their documentation on the skylights. Is that something, and I don't know how much more we want to push, because it just, and now I wouldn't recommend it, because it's not leaking. You know, it's not, and I would think everything is going to go up, you know. I doubt if any cost is going to come down.
We can find out if it's standalone, what the cost would be for the standalone, do it in 3 years, what that would look like.
Does the new roof work flash right up against those skylights?
Yeah, there's a curb there, yeah, it does.
Skylights are just a bad investment.
They are. They're cool. but
They are nice
you
for a
know.
while. But we can look at what the cost would be if it was standalone.
Yeah, it seems to make sense to look at it. Yeah.
We just don't want to jeopardize park.
Yes.
The unknown is still out there with park.
Of course we
We're getting close, but we also have ECC to finish up after park. We're trying to tie those loose ends.
An interesting conversation, so we get them to hold their bid date pricing for 6 months.
And that would help.
I don't think they could hold that for 6 months, unless you, that would give us, at least we would know about park.
Okay. Other questions, comments on the roof bids? Okay, at this point in the agenda, we have a closed session scheduled, and then we will come out of closed session, and there are 3 items to cover that don't require our broader administrative team to be here. So it's a busy, busy time of year with lots going on, including your own kids and various activities going on around various districts. So we appreciate that, respect that. And so we're going to take a closed session, and Dr. Vanderjack, you can direct the team as you see fit, relative to staying or not staying. I assume I know what your position is. Be a little more flexible. Okay, with that, Dr. Vanderjack, I assume you still want to go into closed session?
Correct.
Okay, can I have a motion and second, please, that we go into closed session as a board?
So
Motion by Dawn Stevens, support from Chad Tuttle. We'll do a roundtable. Andrew?
yes.
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 Okay, we are in closed session. The board will adjourn to, there's a conference room.
Right by the pool.
What's that?
Right by the pool.
Right by the pool, by that group of offices up front. So we'll adjourn down there, and then we will return here after closed session. For those that wish to stay around, you're welcome to do so. I would anticipate it could be 1 to 2 hours that we're in closed session. So feel free to stay or not, as you see fit. Okay, we got everybody here. We're out of closed session. We'll continue with discussion items. School resource officer.
I would like to bring to the board in December a request to add an additional resource officer to the Baldwin campus. Currently, we have a resource officer at the high school that's split funded between the city of Hudsonville, Ottawa County Sheriff's Department, and Hudsonville Public Schools. Costs us roughly $48,000 for that resource officer, and it is split a third, a third, a third. We also have a partial payment with Jamestown Township for a partial resource officer, I would say on the Riley campus for the most part. But having the increase with the 5-6 building over at the Baldwin campus with Baldwin Middle School, Georgetown Elementary, as well as you also have Allward and Bauer within the Georgetown Township, would like to request that our board approve paying a portion of adding a resource officer. There's a little bit of a hitch. We've also made the request to Georgetown Township and the request to Ottawa County. If they all agree to pay a third, I would ask that our board approve a third to pay our portion. If they don't, then I would have to come back to the board and come with a plan B. However, Ottawa County can't move until the school district requests, because they'll pay their portion. And at that point, then the rest would go from there. So if the board approves this in January, we would request a resource officer from the Georgetown standpoint. That would give us technically 2.17 resource officers in the district, along with our security team. I don't need to get into the details of the priority of safety in our district, but that would be our request at the January meeting. But I wanted to see if there are any questions here tonight before we get into, before we make that request to go to Georgetown Township. Their meeting would take place in December also, and then Ottawa County would then have the meeting in January to see if they approve it. Ottawa County's on board. Georgetown Township would work through it per our request, and then if they approve it, they do. If they don't, then we would have conversations about what was next.
And this would cover that entire Baldwin campus, not just the middle school, but 5-6.
5-6 also.
Georgetown.
Yeah, the entire campus. Now, understand a resource officer no different than Officer Patma and this campus. When there's an emergency in the county, they are called away. We saw that with the U-Haul situation. But they would be then a presence on the school site and be closer.
Is there a, you said the funding's a third us, a third, but yeah, township and a third county. Okay. Is there a target out there? That's a bad word. Is there a goal out there that MASA, for example, says if you're such and such a student body, so many buildings, you should have X number of resource officers? Is there any guidance out there?
That is a really good question. I do not know the answer to that, other than we did have our security assessment done in the district, and I will go into details in January in a closed session, because there's a lot of security conversations in there that we have to. But there is no recommendation from the latest model that we had. The one thing that we have that districts are now adding is a security team. And that's led by Mike Petrolia here in our office, or in our district. But then we have people at both middle schools that farm out to elementaries. We have a staff here. So Grand Haven is now adding one to their district. Zealand's exploring it. Many other districts are now looking at it. Currently, it's just us, Rockford, Kentwood, and Grand Rapids. But when you get to the size, to your point, 13 buildings, adding another one, we don't know what the future holds. I guess the answer is there's never too many. You just, and you hope you never need them. I don't know how else to. Their presence and their communication and their contact with kids is equally as important as the safety. That's true.
So then in December, we're looking for the board to approve covering a third of the cost.
Yeah, and I just wanted to see if there are any additional questions besides the cost and what the.
Other questions or comments or thoughts on that?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think you answered my one question about if county and township pays for it. Obviously, like you said, in an emergency, you're going to pull that officer out, or at least update them and secure the area.
And you see the funding that's sustained in the county and the township will.
Each year.
I can't speak on their behalf.
Well,
I can tell you that after talking with Pat Briggs for
Yeah.
a while, I think the idea that safety of our school children is a priority. I know it is for Ottawa County. I know it is for our school system, and I would hope that it would be the same for any townships moving forward.
Any other questions or comments on that school resource policy? Okay, next we have policy updates and revisions.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through them one by one. I'll go fast, so please stop if there's ones you want me to spend more time on or go back to. The first policy is policy 0144, which is a board policy based on board bylaws. It has to do with the pay that you receive at your board meetings. The first one we sent you, we left it blank, and that was not intentional. So I hope you didn't look at the first one thinking, oh, they're not going to pay us anymore. We left it blank. So that's why you got an updated one this morning, because there was an area that was left blank. So it's still the same amount. The difference is that it has to go through a 1099 now and has to go through and file with you. So there are some changes to the law that required us to make some changes to the policy. Nothing different than what you received before, just has to go through.
Do all boards pay their members?
No, they do not. Some boards pay a different amount. The recommendation is $30. There are some boards that make a recommendation at the beginning of the year to pay their boards, and the board, they make a motion and a second, and then they deny it. Then they all vote no to not be paid. So it varies in every some districts. $100, and it's a lot.
I'd kind of like to see that we pay nothing. But
I just, when I got this, I was like, oh, hey, pay for this. Well,
I'd like to cover my gas, although mine isn't very dry.
The only recommendation I would have is at the beginning of the year, when you have your general meeting, that is one of the things that you approve. And if that's something the board wants to have discussions on, that is none of my business.
I did meet a board member from Florida one time, they paid $25,000 a year down
Yeah,
there.
but that's their job, that's what they, I mean, that's primarily their job, but yeah, you're right.
This isn't?
Depends on where you're sitting.
I don't know, you're retired, tell us, is it
Yeah.
your job now?
Policy number 5350 is another one of those policies that we have an administrative guideline, 5350, which follows the Blue Envelope Project, which we've shared with the board in the past. And that referenced policy 5350, which is our student suicide policy. Unfortunately, this policy did not exist. So this is another policy that was missed years ago that is now brought to our attention, so we're bringing it to the board. So this, you can look at this language and think, what did we change? This policy for us did not exist, so it's a new policy for us. And it models exact policy, exact procedures that we have in place with the Blue Envelope Project. So they model each other now, the guidelines and the policy itself. But we referenced a policy that didn't exist.
What did you say, it was a blue?
Envelope Project?
Envelope.
And if you want to revisit that, we have, every administrator has them, every counselor has them. It's literally a blue envelope.
Okay.
And now the guidelines actually spell out exactly the process. So the guidelines are updated, but they reference a policy that doesn't exist.
Okay.
Which hopefully will. Policy 6108 is the electronic card and transfer. That is just based on law. The only difference is you can see the very last. I can't create administrative guidelines that violates the law, so that was stricken from the policy. If you look at the very last line, that's stricken. Policy 6460 gets into vendor relations. This stems back to the conversation, if you remember, the music conversation regarding having a sole vendor for your music, whether it's Meyer Music or whoever does your music program. This stems into that conversation that you can have a recommended vendor, but they can't interfere with regular activities and just have sole purpose to your kids. So you can have a recommendation, but they can't just force their way in on your kids unless the board approves a vendor coming in. So this is a tweak that basically has happened all over the area because there was a lawsuit filed regarding access to music equipment. Policy number 6700 is just the changes to the Fair Labor Standards. If you look at the last page, you see the additional language for nursing mothers that we want to make sure we have.
Do we have nursing rooms adequately throughout the district?
So we have nursing areas that teachers can use.
Spaces that comply.
In the new 5-6 building, we built one. But in our other buildings, we use rooms that are in compliance with what they need. We had the foresight enough, in our new 5-6 building, we actually did design a room specifically for that.
And the rooms that
And
are
it's not just a nursing room, it's really a privacy room, but it's designed for nursing with technology, chair, and just everything that you need in there.
And the rooms in the other buildings, again, they meet that privacy, right?
They definitely meet the privacy, but they don't have the lush equipment, I would say, from a comfy chair, if you will.
Is that something we look at potentially? I mean, I know it's outside of this policy, but is that something maybe we look at?
It's definitely something we can look at. We've not had people that have expressed concerns about a location that they would use. But we have, you know what, I'm not going to lie, we have a lot of young teachers that we hire, and we will work with anybody that has a request that we're not meeting their comfort level. Traditionally, and just to be very honest, traditionally teachers want to use their room when the kids aren't there, and so we just make sure there's privacy notification. That's their comfort area. But we'll definitely.
Yeah, having dealt a lot at work with this transition, an important transition to providing nursing rooms, and then also having two daughters that have gone through this. You know, there's a lot of women, I think, and I don't mean to speak on behalf of women, but my perspective, primarily from work actually, from where I used to work, is that there's a lot of women that they just kind of, well, this is what it is, you know, and this is what they provide, and they won't say anything, and it takes that, you know, one or two or three that stand up. So maybe it's just something worth looking at, upgrading all those rooms.
Yeah, I will tell you from an elementary standpoint, which is a majority of our female teachers, and that's just saving the numbers. Because of safety in numbers, they would make sure that they spoke up for their teammate if they did, which we appreciate. I mean, we are in a people business, so I think they do feel comfortable
Yeah, so-
asking for that. So
Okay.
we'll definitely, we can revisit that with our administrators too to make sure they understand
Yeah.
our expectations.
Thank you.
The next one is policy 7217. I have to say that this policy has been out of date since 2016 because of the weapons-free zone that we have in the district. So this now has been updated. That met with Mike several times, met with Ottawa County several times to make sure the language is updated that meets our expectations that we have a weapons-free school. If there is a weapon that is on campus, if somebody says, I have the right to carry a weapon, which they definitely, there's questions about whether they do. If you remember the Clio case and the Ann Arbor case, we have the responsibility to lock the district down to that point. So this models the policy as it should be, and Mike and I went through this several times, and I believe this is, if you have questions, let me know, but this would then be updated to meet our expectations when it comes to weapons-free school.
Can the parent open carry in the building?
So legally, it depends on who you ask. If you are in Ann Arbor or Clio, the answer is no. But we also have the ability to lock the building down if they choose to.
Because we had the issue a few years ago, a parent was quite defiant, and insisted on coming to the building with open carry.
It probably was right when the law changed.
Yeah.
I will say, we've had parents before that'll come in that are open carrying, and they're like, oh, can I run back to my car? We're like, absolutely. We've had very good cooperation. I don't think anybody's trying to make a statement now. Hopefully there's a lot going on in schools right now. Hopefully now is not the time.
Only one parent.
I recall that.
And finally, there's policy 744003. I had a professional qualified drone pilot review this to make sure that it is up to speed, that has passed his FAA certification, and Dylan thinks our policy is now up to speed. It was not, he said, don't take option one, because that's not what we do. Take option two. Okay, so that's a policy that we bring. So those policies, if you have questions regarding those, please, if you get a chance to read through them and you have more questions, please let me know. We plan on bringing them to the board on the January 8th for the first reading of those policies.
Okay. All right, last item, Jenison Public Schools bus route proposal. Again, we had talked about this as a board. Doug took away from the consensus of the board at that time that Jenison coming into our district and picking up students was something that has been done, that we want to move away from. And so Doug communicated that, I'm speaking for you here, but you communicated that with Jenison Super, and they came back with a, well, what about this?
Yeah.
Dawn and I did have a chance, Barb. Barb and I had a chance to take a look at this briefly over breakfast a couple weeks ago now, a few weeks ago now, but wanted to bring it to the board for awareness of the board that this discussion is going on with Jenison.
So you summarized it very well. I took the conversation to be that we need to clean this up. I believe that was the exact terminology that was used. So all of our routes in our district are stopped at Hudsonville Public School addresses. We do have a few buses that drive through Jenison streets to get to our houses, and we fully expect Jenison to have buses that would drive through our streets to get to their houses, because otherwise you can't get to some houses in either district. It is not a problem that the districts have created. Developers have done this, and they've been approved by townships, and we can't get around that. Hopefully in the future, people will be informed a little bit better. When we did this, we asked, and this started actually 2 years ago, when we knew we were going to build the 5-6 building. I had let the former superintendent know that, at some point, we're not going to allow I don't know how many hundreds of runs they have to continue to drive through the district, because now we have room in the district for students. And so now they have a new superintendent, and it's not easy to clean this up, but at some point I think we need to clean it up. When I met with Ken and Barb, they had recommended 7 stops to take place in the district, and I went to them and I say, these 3 do not make any sense. You can move it 1 house the other direction in your district. So they cleaned up 3 of them. They left 4 on here that they're asking for approval. Keep in mind, this year they have a couple hundred that are taking place and going down to these 4. Now, I'm just going to be very honest with you. The first stop is in red. It is a stop at a clubhouse in the Lowing Woods subdivision, and their map is not exact to the drawing that they have. their houses, the clubhouse is clearly in Hudsonville. So what the bus could do is it could drive through the clubhouse and then drive back up the street and pick up students that are 4 houses in. So that would fall within the expectation if they stop within the district. Same thing with the blue stop, which is the second one down. That map doesn't depict. They could go 2 houses over and pick up their students. The yellow and the red, I have to be honest with you, are stops that are right along 28th. And I talked to Byron Center, Granville, and Zeeland. Do you, on a road like that, will you stop on either side of the street if your students are not, if your district is on one side but not the other? And they said they only stop on the side of the street that has their students. And those stops are clearly not, those are well into Hudsonville. Those are not stops that are in Jenison. So when I told the superintendent, good friend of mine, he's doing a great job, and I think he's amazing. I told him the conversation that these need to be done by the start of the 23 school year. He asked if I would take this back to the board. I took it to Barb and Ken, and I think as the 3 of us decided to bring it back to the board and say, what do you think? It is what you can consider a compromise. I don't know if it meets the expectation, and the question is, if it's 4 now, is it, we forgot about this one stop, now it's 5, and then it goes back to where we were, where there's 200 or 300 in 5 years. I don't know the answer to that. That won't be probably any of our issues.
Sure.
That might be a good start.
I mean, 200 stops down to 4.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
pretty good.
so keep in mind, that could be the same number of students.
That was my next
That are
question.
A lot
impacted.
of kids standing
Yeah.
That's correct.
Does it endanger the kids to do this? Have a bunch of kids standing in one place to pick up that? I don't want to,
I would think the clubhouse would be safer.
it probably would be.
Warmer, probably. Yeah, it doesn't, the only thing is, we were pretty firm on our stops. Does that mean we go back and say we can add, which I'm sure parents would be like, oh great, we can add stops now too. And now it turns into this game of they can have 4, we can have 4, and, or do we say,
I'd say we can try this, see how it works, you know, we can always change our mind, and they can change our mind later on if we want to, but I don't know that it's going to accomplish the ultimate goal of diminishing the number of students going to Jenison schools.
I don't know if it was the goal of diminishing. I think the perception was that we have many real estate people telling them you can pick which district you go to. And regardless of what bus you take, it's still a school of choice question. You know, if they shut down school of choice, which they won't, or if we shut down school of choice, that's a different story. In the past, we've minimized certain grade levels of schools of choice. So that's a different conversation.
Well, I saw it as taking students away from us, which I didn't mind because it helped us, help moderate our growth here, you know, and I didn't mind that at all, but I didn't think long-term it was a positive thing for us to do. It started with Dresser, when he was superintendent. I'm okay to try this, you know, I don't want to say we're committed forever and ever to that. Let's see how that works.
You may have made a significant attempt at decreasing the stops.
He made it. Say it again.
They've made a significant attempt to decrease spots. They've had, Doug said about 200, 1 to 200 stops.
That's
We're
right.
down to 4.
Down to 4. Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm willing to try it.
I think it's a good shot at it. Give it a try here.
What do you think, Tom?
I can't say I'm strong one way or another.
Okay.
I think it gives a good attempt. I do always get concerned about it starts to go down path of, well, we're just gonna add, well, these people are just over a quarter mile, so can we just like slip in another one? But as long as we're watching that.
Say, is there a process?
Who watches it?
Is there a process? I don't, somebody, I mean, the
'Cause
only
this-
reason, part of the reason was, you know, in my former subdivision, there were more Jenison buses in the subdivision than Hudsonville buses. And when you came back out of your driveway, and I'm calling Tenbury and saying, hey, move your bus, I gotta get out of here.
I mean, you would think for the people in the neighborhood, they would appreciate the fact that there are less buses stopping.
This is their kids that are
affected by it.
Well, that, yeah.
I think our job is to create the best schools that we can and attract the students. I don't want to be technical or legalistic about bus stops here, but if we have the best possible schools, then they'll come here. I know some of them are in transition because kids started there and they moved to Hudsonville, which is a growing area here. But yeah, just let's be good schools, and 4 is a good number.
Anyone else, Jay?
I would, whatever you decide, I would memorialize it in writing and time limit to force the revisitation of decisions.
That's a good idea.
Either
That's a good idea.
annually or every 2 or 3 years or something to say, you know, our board has approved it for the 2023 school year. The board has asked that this come before the board every year for review and discussion or something along those lines.
You could put a good behavior clause in there too.
Yeah.
What about the stops that we've reduced that were in Jenison? Ask them to allow us to bring them back?
Do we have any stops in Jenison now?
I
Yeah,
think
real
that
long.
makes it an even slippery or slope myself.
It's just hard for me to, the parents that I had to tell no this year was not a lot of fun.
Mhm.
And now I feel like I'm gonna take another beating for,
Because you're
why
not
did you
some.
do this? Jenison's not doing that.
Mhm.
It's like, all right.
But like
Just one more.
location number 2, just location number 2, if I'm reading that correctly, the second sentence is located on the Hudsonville Public School side of the street for student safety, so children do not have to cross 24. I'm assuming on the other side of the street it's Jenison, but they want it there so kids don't have to cross. I'm like all for that. I don't want a kid
Sure.
to get hit.
Well, they stop on both sides of the street, just so you know.
Yeah, but I don't want a kid to have to cross, I guess.
And I understand that, but we have, that's every bus stop. I mean, that's, in our, I live in,
So how many stops did we pull out of Jenison? Ballpark?
43.
43? Are
And
there?
they were all movable. I mean, yeah, people had to walk a little bit more, and that's the whole school of choice.
I know.
It's a choice.
I got it, yeah.
Right? So, yeah, we don't, the kids cross the street at every stop. And 28th, 24th, 22nd, I see them by our house, and they put their flashers on. And yes, student safety is very important. They can pull into a subdivision and pick up. But they'll stop off at 24th, we'll start pulling in.
Yeah, so the point you raised, the last point you raised is that you've had some very, very difficult discussions with parents saying we're not going to do this anymore. And now we put you in a challenging situation by saying, okay, we're wavering a little bit on the clean it up comment by saying, okay, we'll try these 4. And it puts you in a typical situation with a parent that says, well, wait a minute, you told me and now you're, and so, right? That's,
Correct.
yeah.
And maybe then, to Chad's point, maybe you make it this year only.
Yeah.
It's just
What?
end of November. They've been doing it now, they're like, why didn't you tell me this in August? That's okay, I'll figure it out. But it's the wavering that is hard.
This would start with the middle school year.
Correct. Not till next.
Would you say,
We did it this
I know we're
year.
belaboring this, and 9:30 is our goal out here. Would you say that there are 2 or 3 stops, and you say, well, if I could have that one and that one back, I'd take it? But that's a or not? You know.
Every kid's important, so I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Did they write the Jenison report?
Yeah.
All right.
If you look at the property map, it looks different than that map.
But I look at like location number 1, it's a clubhouse, it's a safe place. There's usually a parking lot in front of a clubhouse. To me, it's a safe option. I just don't have an issue with that. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, I would hate for this to happen and something bad to happen to a kid at one of these stops, and then we have to, I don't know.
Every district has
Sometimes
this
safety in numbers
conversation,
is-
just so you know.
Yeah.
But we're the only district that allows somebody to drive and pick up in our district. So that concern is with, that's the school of choice part.
Right, but the
Yeah, I
other
got it.
difference is we have subdivisions that the realtors or whatever have marketed, where do other school districts have these subdivisions that have or have?
Yep.
They do.
Granville, Jenison, does Byron Center, Granville.
There's no clean lines out there, is what
No, there's houses that are in both. We've had to have
We
legal
have-
since I've been
Yes, I
here.
remember that.
We've had
yeah.
parents that have
District
point two
going.
and point eight. They're like, can I send one kid here and 4 kids
Yeah.
here? I'm like, sure.
So we, do. I think the idea of a, no matter which approach we take, of a memorializing it and putting time limit on it, I think makes a ton of sense. We don't have to take action on this as a board, right?
Correct.
We empower you to
This is
take
the
action on this.
directive we give.
They don't need an answer right now, right?
Current state of this is their buses are not stopping, correct?
Here.
They are stuck in there. We've given them, we told them at the end of, this is it, at the end of this school year.
At the end of the school.
You gotta clean them all up, except for
Gotcha.
maybe these 4 we have to decide.
We put a timeline on this about 2.5 years ago when we knew the 5-6 building was opening up the fall of '23.
Sounds
that
like
conversation's been
discussion
taking
and
place.
another board to deal with.
Come on, Chad, come on.
Well, that's the point. Okay, so we got a couple options. We can make the decision now, we'll go with these 4, and, we apologize, Doug, for giving you some direction, and now you gotta backtrack on that. Sometimes that's how it goes. We can say, let's just table it, we're gonna table it, and everybody sleep on it over the Christmas holidays, and we'll bring it up in January. I know Jenison wants an answer, but we'll bring it back up in January, we'll talk about it then. Because this isn't you got till next fall to figure this out, Jenison.
My
Or we
gut
can
feels-
say, or we can say no. We said no is none, none is none, and we need none.
I do think all 4 of those stops are very manageable to pick up on their side of the district and pick up their kids
Okay.
in a safe environment.
Okay.
The ones that are, there are clubhouses well in Jenison that we could go pick up too, but we're not gonna do that. So, yeah. And
Okay, so
to some degree, we don't have an abundance of drivers to add more routes, and
Yep.
that's another conversation.
So, thoughts from the board? Table it or go with this?
Just go with us. We have enough things on agendas to keep coming
Okay,
back.
that's fine. Chad, go with it, table it?
The
With,
chances, just table it.
you said table it, you weighed in. But with the documenting it and putting a sundown on it, that's gotta be part of the deal, and they gotta agree to that. Okay,
I could go both ways,
Okay.
honestly.
I agree with what you said.
And I'm just okay.
Okay.
Option 1, the location 1, the Bowling Woods Clubhouse. This subdivision is serviced by both school districts, correct? They are just asking to stop at the clubhouse. I don't know what the challenge is with that, I guess.
The clubhouse is well within Hudsonville School District. It's not bordering Hudsonville. It's not like a split plot. That's-
So the
that's the-
clubhouse is in the Hudsonville
It's
district?
it's well in the Hudsonville district. Yeah. They're going to a location in the district to pick up kids. That's it.
I still have an issue with it.
In the big scheme of things, this is minor compared to other things that we have to deal with. But the point that we're kind of wavering a little bit concerns me. But I think you got consensus from the board. We're sorry you got to deal with some upset parents. We'll revisit it in the future, maybe even a year from now.
I'm not bringing it back.
This one?
I'm not going back with this.
Well, the board doesn't require a decision. We don't need board action on this.
Yeah.
We made the big step from 300 or whatever it is to this.
So they say.
And keep talking to your buddy over in Jenison and say, hey,
It's gonna be-
And
come on.
please don't
Be back
send
to
50
300
kids
a
to each stop.
Don't say
They will.
50 kids. Well,
That's okay. It is what it is.
okay, anything else on that? Okay, we'll do a quick round table and then we'll adjourn. Andrew, anything?
No.
Okay,
No, good.
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 All set.
Okay, motion to adjourn, please. Motion by Chad, support from Don, all in favor, yes?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.